Hello everyone. So I think it's not 3 p.m. and we can start. So I'm Loïc Castel. Hi. Uh, Welcome to my bedroom, I would say, because the context is a bit special this month and the previous months. As you all know, we are in a lockdown lockdown time. And this webinar will be about the actual subject, which is COVID-19, and on the theme of social engineering and more particular phishing. So let's get started. Just a bit of presentation. I manage a team of engineers, security engineers, mostly dedicated to offensive work, penetration testing, social engineering, simulations, but we also start implementing defensive services like web application, firewall, EDR, this kind of thing. So the goal of this webinar is to share the feedback we have during our assessments, during our missions, working with our customers, and yeah, explain, dig into a subject. And the one today is dedicated to phishing. So here is a list of the previous webinars. They are all on YouTube, all in English or French, and approximately 30 minutes each. So I invite you to register to the channel of SSL 24/7 and watch them if you like. So some rules regarding the webinar. If you have any questions, you can go into the questions tab and type them. I will answer them in the end. And so we rehearsed this webinar bits. We know it's approximately 30 minutes, like the other webinar, so it shouldn't last longer. So the situation, as you all know of, is a crisis, a pandemic. Maybe it seems ridiculous to explain the situation right now due to the fact that it's obvious, but this video is going to be recorded and shown on YouTube later. So it might be that in 10, 20 years, we will all forget about it, or maybe the next generation won't remember it that much. I think in 20 years, honestly, I will remember it. But anyway, pandemic that forced most countries into lockdown, strict or not, and it created mainly two changes for IT employees and people working with IT tools, which is we have to work from home, right? The woman on the left is a representation of this with a little mug of tea or coffee in the head, on a bed. So this creates change for lots of things, and this creates opening for attackers. That's the goal of explaining of that. And the man on the right is it's stress. So the little thingy, the black thingy around his head is stress, bad, negative vibes, and this also creates opening for attackers. So we are basically in a crisis situation, and we will see how it applies to current threats, and in particular phishing. So crisis situation, what does it change? What is it changing right now? Employees are stressed, meaning they are more prone to make errors, and if they receive an email, they will be more prone to click on it and to give away whatever the scammer is asking, because they are stressed, basically. Their attention, our attention, is more focused on the current situation. This is one of the cognitive bias I will talk about in the, I think, 2 slides later. The availability heuristic bias, cognitive bias, which means that we tend to give more attention that it should be given to whatever is available to us, which is the coronavirus situation and news. So anything related, remotely related to COVID-19 will automatically go on the top of our head. And this will be used by attackers. And this is what attackers are using right now. And also partners. So partners for the company are affected and less reliable. So this is, everyone is affected by this crisis. All companies, some are more, some are less, but everyone is affected, including security partners, including the one in the security operations center or the one that do security monitoring, and for instance on email. So there are people hired to look at attempts, threats, alerts, and they will be less effective, meaning this will create gaps and openings for attackers. Work from home also did some changes, not that related to phishing, except the last one. So basically, in 2 or 3 days, everyone has had to move from 10-20% of remote workers to 90% to 100%. This obviously relates more to IT person working in the IT field, and that some changes had to be done really quickly, and there have been errors done, lots of errors, due to the fact that it was stressful, due to the fact it had to be quick, and yeah, many applications had to be made from internal use to external use with a VPN or not, depending. So it's always better with a VPN, and VPN had to be enabled, or the access to VPN had to be extended from a small percentage of the employee to most employees, meaning that if there is a working password usable by an attacker but not usable because the employee was not allowed to do VPN work or remote work from home, now we can. So this is the kind of stuff that will be used by attackers. It is being used by attackers. And the last one, maybe more related to what we're going to talk today, is the communication disruption, meaning that everything communicated is altered, and people are there are more difficulty into communicating. So if just an example, if you receive an email, it looks suspicious. If you're working in a normal environment, normal situation from your local office, you see something, you ask your colleague, hey, can you come have a look for a minute? You will look at your screen and say, yeah, it's definitely a scam or definitely a phishing attempt. So please alert everyone. So first, and when you are in a remote like now, remote working, we tend to we don't want to disturb our colleagues. We don't want to chat. Also, it will take more time for the people we are asking, and for us as well. So we tend to do our thing on our own. And it has been proven in some studies that when we do remote work, we are more autonomous, we take more risks. So this could be positive, but this could also be negative, because a risk could elevate the probability of an attacker's having success into doing phishing. Now, this leads us to cognitive biases. Obviously, I'm not going to explain all the cognitive biases. First, I'm going to explain what is cognitive bias. This was introduced in the 70s by a Nobel Prize and one of his colleagues, Daniel Kahneman, and he wrote a really excellent book named Thinking Fast and Slow. I urge you to read it, it's really good, and where he develops on the idea of cognitive bias, and he explained some that are really interesting. So he has a few examples related to the situation. Just moving my window. So the first one I already talked about, the availability heuristic. We tend to give more importance to whatever is available to us. So what is going on TV, for instance. The bandwagon effect. This explains why people are buying lots of toilet papers, basically. You see someone doing something, you replicate the behavior because it's easier. I just forgot before explaining all the cognitive biases. What he's explaining in his book, Daniel Kahneman, is that we have two systems in our head. We have system one, which is intuitive, which is fast, which is the one we use without knowing it too much, and the system two, which is which is rational and is involved, for instance, when you're doing a difficult mathematical operation. If I ask you 24 multiplied by 16, you're going to use the system 2. If I ask you 2 plus 2, you're going to use the system 1, 4. Because it's memory. And the cognitive biases are viewed, are observed when the system 1 takes over system 2, basically. So when you tend to do judgments without thinking too much about it. So this creates effects, the lots of effects we are observing every day. Bandwagon effect, the survivorship biases. So this is interesting. The most common example of this are the planes coming back from the front during World War II. So most experts, when trying to reinforce the plane hull, I think this is the term, sorry. When referencing the plane against bullets, basically against attacks, they analyze the returning plane and they put some reinforcement on the parts that were done on the returning plane, not on the plane that crashed. But that should have done the opposite, because if you reinforce the part of the returning plane, this does not make sense. And that's what happened. This is the example of the survivorship bias. We tend to analyze on the wrong side of the data we should analyze. So, for instance, coronavirus, we are focusing on the mortality rate, whereas we could focus on the survivorship, not the survivorship, but the recovery rate, for instance. But also, we are completely overestimating the mortality rate due to the fact that there are some people that are contracting the virus but are not aware of it. So we are definitely overestimating the mortality rate, because there is no way to know the people contracting the coronavirus because they don't get tested, except in countries that tested everyone, where this bias will be completely reduced. Normalcy biases, so tend to consider a situation as normal when it's not normal, like now. The opposite also is true. You tend to extrapolate and consider a situation completely abnormal, whereas normal or almost normal. And the one that is the most important, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out, this is what drives social media right now, and this is what drives all about the news and the 24/7 news all over the world. You tend to not want to miss anything about what's important. So you tend to overestimate, to put on the top of your head the subject that is new, that is important. Underestimating whatever you should do instead. And there is one effect that is not shown in this slide. It's scarcity effect, and it has been proven in phishing that there have been some. I read an interesting thesis on this earlier, that the scarcity effect is the most impacting one when you do a phishing campaign. This is the one that we use in another case study. We're gonna that the one that we're gonna cover today. But basically, we proposed fakely proposed mask for the situation, for the actual situation, and asked people to fill in a form to receive basically free mask. So obviously, the mask situation, the masks are scarce. It's difficult to find them at this time, and so it will imply that people are gonna be really more prone to answer this than, for instance, if we ask them to fill out to get I don't know, free pen or free anything. Okay, so our attackers are profiting the situation. So what has been observed in the last 2 months, including April 2020, is the rise of new malicious domains, of new malicious certificates, thousands of new sites popping everywhere, to carry out spam campaigns, phishing, spreading malwares with the use of COVID-19, coronavirus 19, C19, every possibility. And it's really a trend. You can see that when you analyze the registered domains or the certificate, you can see that definitely. You can analyze that, and you can even use that as a heuristic to deduce that it could be an attempt on phishing. Malwares, we are starting to see coronavirus linked application or maps. For instance, the last application, this is one of the most talked subject in France, but the stop COVID-19 application that is supposed to track whether has catch the disease. This must be the same in the UK as well. There have been some fake applications like that, but that were infected by malware, not with in fact the phone or the computer of the person using it. And finally, ransomware. So we've seen something interesting that the people from the info security community have been kind of disclaiming that threatening the attackers, saying that if you are targeting hospitals, clinics, laboratory, you're dead, because they don't have to deal with that right now, and you should not do that. Well, of course, the attackers, they do not, maybe some did, but they don't care that much, and they are targeting this sector, because if you are in the IT department of an hospital, and if you get ransomware, you don't have the time to deal with an investigation, to deal with an outage for 1 week, 1 month. It is not the right time. So you will pay the ransom and analyze later. That's why it's a good return on investment for attackers. So now to the case study. The one we chose to talk about is obviously an interesting one. We wouldn't have chosen a boring one, of course. We've been working with this customer for 3 years now, doing a phishing simulation every year. And we've basically observed a trend, a trajectory, where the more campaigns we do, the less successful results we have, which is positive, which is a good thing, meaning less people are falling into the trap. So for this customer, I'm going to just explain in a few minutes how it works. It's a big company separated on multiple sites, physical sites, and there are lots of employees, but we generally chose with that customer to select a sample of victims to evaluate the risk of being phished. And each campaign, we change a sample, which we choose it big enough to be representative, but we do it like that. So basically, in the first year, we were about 40% of successful people giving away their credentials. That's a statistic we observed. You can argue that it's weird. There is something weird with the figures. The bar is over 100% when it relates to clicked link. So what we do, we send when we do a campaign. I'm going to explain it later, but we send a mail with a link, and the link leads to a page that replicates legitimate service that we have used. And why is it over 100%? Just because the link was forwarded to person either inside or outside the company. And yeah, just there are more people that were targeted than answered than the one that were actually targeted. So this just happened in the 2017 campaign. In the second one, we see the trend 15%, and then in 2019, 10%, knowing that on the 18 and 19 campaign, there were always one or two guys sending an email to everyone saying, okay, this is a phishing campaign. Let's stop. I see my image has disappeared. I'm gonna try to put it back. Okay, just well, anyway, perfect. So where was I? So I'm just stuck here. Yeah, 2018 and 2019, there were always 1 or 2 person alerting about the campaign and basically shutting down every possibility to give results, which means that everyone that got caught would have had the opportunity to change their password really quickly and diminish the impact on the company. So in 19, we are in a situation where it's not that bad. Not that bad. But in 2020, you will see. Normally, if we follow the trajectory in 2020, we should be at 10, no, less than 10, 5, even 0%. Okay, and this is the trend we observe on every customer that we do occasionally phishing campaign. So how do we make a campaign, mail campaign? So a phishing campaign. So this is a bit like launching a marketing campaign. Kudos to the marketing team that is in my ears, that I can hear if I say something wrong, they will correct me. They are behind the scene. You cannot see them, but thanks to them for organizing the webinar, by the way. But regarding the phishing campaign, the first thing we have to do is to do project management. We have to arrange lots of elements with our customers, involve sometimes the HR team, HR director, the CFO, depending, there could be many persons involved. We have to define a scenario, and that scenario needs to be, or more scenarios, and it needs to be validated. And lots of communication around that. Also, we have to make sure that it's possible on an HR point of view, that it's possible to kind of try to lure the employee into doing something like that. Normally, it's authorized to do so. There's no law against that, but it's always better to put it in the kind of the chart, kind of whatever the employee signs regarding the IT side, it should be somewhere that the IT team is authorized to carry out simulation like this. Just to assess the security awareness of everyone using the IT tools. So the first thing is building a simulation infrastructure. So this is not that complicated, but it has to be automated. It has to be done, since we are doing this kind of exercise 2 or 3 times a month. Not for the same customer, of course, but for different customers. And we always want to work with I'm looking for the term, but segmented environments. So we are basically creating a new instance, new domain, new IP. Each time we are doing this, just to lower the probability of being caught. And this has to be automated, because if you do that manually each time, it's gonna take us 2 or 3 days. Each time it's gonna be too long. So we are automating it. We are already automating it. Cost us a lot of time, but no, it's stable, and so avoids doing error. The next part is imagining a scenario, a deadly scenario, if you pardon me for the bad joke, but basically it has to work. It has to be realistic. So we chose to, we know there are some person doing this same kind of exercise, but they've chosen to do to simulate, let's say, average threats. So threats that are mails that are considered as spam, or that are really average, really common, and not that realistic. But that is the most probable that you will receive this mail instead of the one we are sending. But we chose to simulate realistic scenario, just to make sure to elevate the level of security awareness of the employees. If they're able to catch this one, they will be easily able to catch the less realistic ones. So we imagine a scenario. Maybe sometimes it's quite complex. There is 2, 3, 4 steps. Depends on what you want to do. We try to stick to the reality, to stick to the actuality, like attackers do. If there is an election, we'll use the election. If there is a crisis, we'll use a crisis. Not always. We don't have to be predictable, but the attackers are doing that. Yeah, we then prepare the campaign. We input whatever sample of people we want to target. We create mail, we create a landing page. Then we launch the campaign, we push the red button, and we analyze the results. So the analysis takes a bit of time. We can compare to the state of the art, we can compare to other customers, we can compare to previous campaigns. There's lots of stats to go through. So here's the actual case study. So this is the first thing the victim will receive. This is a mail looking like you've been shared a document on OneDrive. So obviously we can only do that on the customers that are using Office 365. If they are using, let's say, Google Drive, it won't work. Or yeah, it might work, but it will have to come from someone outside the company. In that case, it's someone inside the company. And you can see the domain here is ms-forms.com. All right, so it looks like the official one from Microsoft, except it's not at all the same. And the person impersonated, there is a name, we hide it, but we can already see that there is a mismatch between the name here and the email address. But anyway, the goal here is to click on the link. So we click on the link, we arrive on a landing page, which is an authentication, exactly looking like the Office 365 one. We actually put a lot of work into crafting JavaScript, crafting HTML to make sure that it looks exactly the same. It takes exactly the amount of millisecond used by Office 365 to go from the login to the password, just to make sure that, yeah, it does not make a spot at this step. And there is also you can spot here the domain name. You can spot the URL, which looks a bit weird, and you can spot also the certificate. If you have a doubt, if you don't have a doubt, then you probably won't look at the certificate to every website that asks you for authentication. But if you have a doubt, always do that. Look at that. Look at the certificate. We'll see it's a Let's Encrypt one. So yeah, it's definitely suspicious. What else? Yeah, if you are used to log in on Microsoft Office, generally you will have the autocomplete email here. So if it does not autocomplete, either it means that you're using a new browser on your computer or not your computer. So this can happen. But if it doesn't, then check the domain and see if it's the same one as when you log in on Microsoft Office. Also, a good tampering, good way to know that you've been phished is that if you enter your login and your password and you have activated the multi-factor authentication, the MFA, you should be presented with an SMS or a message. If you're not, you've been phished, and change your passwords right now. Okay, and then once you've sent your login passwords, you are presented with a form that looks legitimate, because we don't want to alert victims that they've been phished. And sometimes, not in this case study, once you fill the form and you've sent your login password, you will receive a message saying you have been part of a social engineering experimentation. This is how you could have spotted, and we already do some awareness work. This is good, maybe not for the first campaign, but for the second one, it's really good. It's really powerful. So once we've set everything up, we select a sample, we launch the campaign, and we obtain the results. So we're almost at the end of the webinar. We've seen that we sent 62%. No, we sent 62 mail here. there have been approximately 66% opened, so 2/3. Everyone that opened the email click on the link, meaning the mail was well done, because yeah, nobody or almost nobody spot that it was a phishing email from the email. And then 27, meaning almost half of the person that were phished were actually phished and gave their credentials. And in case you ask, we are already removing the one that are sending fake password, or we are testing the password right away. Comparing to last campaign, we see the trajectory. If you can see my mouth, it's going down, 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 and up, back again to square one, basically. And this show our point, which is the situation is not the same as what it used to be. People are more prone to error, and the fact that we use actuality, that we use coronavirus COVID-19 to spread a phishing campaign is really powerful for us, meaning it's powerful for attackers. This is obviously a bias as well. We are only showing one study, and you can always say, yeah, this is one study, this may be one exception, and these other campaigns are not the same. I agree, they are not the same, but they all have the same trend, meaning comparing the previous campaign to the current one, the one from this month, it's always at least 2 times more successful than the previous one, which is counterintuitive because it should have been less than before, because employees should have been more security aware due to the campaign. What can you do from there? Once you have the credential, you can log in on Office 365, access OneDrive, SharePoint, every document used on Office 365, emails, and if you happen to have Phish administrators, you will have access to the Azure Active Directory Administration Center with privileges, and it could lead to the entire IT system being compromised. So I think this is it for this webinar. I'm just going to spend 1 or 2 minutes regarding the remediation. This is one good infographic from Interpol. Be vigilant, be skeptical, be safe. All the current info security advices are true, stay true. But look at your firewalls that you changed, look at the changes, and maybe patch some holes that you made during the stressful periods in March. Use strong password, use MFA, use password managers, keep updating. It's not because we are working remotely that we stop at one point updating. There are still new vulnerabilities being discovered, being published, and new campaigns by attackers made to compromise our assets on internet and on internal networks as well. So thank you for joining us. I invite you again to look at our channel, SSL 24/7, to look at previous webinars talking about really different subjects. It's in English and French. And just so you know, if you happen to know a person working in the medical healthcare sector, SSL 24/7 is taking part in the war against coronavirus. We are doing pro bono services. We are giving pro bono services, free services to the healthcare sector, so laboratory, clinics, hospitals. I assume the people working in this establishment right now are stressed and don't have time. The goal of these services would be to maybe avoid a cyber crisis on top of the pandemic. So this could always be good to use that. Thank you. I'm going to look at the question now. Okay, so there are some questions here. I just need to find out how to how many people in company X. So how many people? I think we are close to 1,000 people. So as I said, we are selecting samples each time just to make sure that we are not using, like we usually do in sociology or statistics, selecting a sample and using that other sample, but changing the sample size as well between months or between years. Another question. Let me see. Cool. Okay. So how can you spot a fake email? Maybe some more detail on that. All right. Okay. So as I said, there is a certificate. There is the context as well. If a mail out of nowhere is coming from a place that is not used to send this kind of information, then it's completely probable that it's a phishing attempt. So basically, try to make your system to or make your employee aware of this kind of threat, and try to make the system 2 active instead of the system 1, instead of automatism. Is there an email gateway provider that has more attacks than others? Example, Gmail, Microsoft. Yes, I would say Office 365 is getting a lot. Not only phishing like this, but also lots of passwords brute forcing attempts. Because lots of people are using Microsoft for authentication, and attackers know that, and they have developed API or automatic way of brute forcing testing login password against lists or against leaks from database leaks from companies that have been compromised and that has disclosed their login and clear text password, and they are used as well. What is your advice if you spot a phish email from a known company? How do you report it or just ignore? So if you spot a phish email from a known company, the best is to report it, of course. So first, report it to your coworkers. Maybe check that check your immediate related coworkers that you've received that. Check that they've received it also. If they did, then it might be worth sending an email to everyone or to the IT department that will spread the word to make sure that it does not get ignored and that people will just stop the attack before it gets bad. And is it mandatory to report it to the company that is being impersonated? Yes, it could be, because it could affect not only your company as a client, as a customer, but maybe other customers, so it could avoid them. But yeah. So I think we've answered some question. I don't think there's some. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. Stay safe, stay home, and yeah, if you want to rewatch the webinar, previous one, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna close the webinar now. Bye. Have a good afternoon.